I think we have a score update. And there's good and bad news for a particular team. That team is the blue team. Blue team, do we want the good news first or the bad news first? Okay, good news. Blue team may or may not have one smuggler last night. So let's see how that affected the score. Blue team is currently in the lead. That's the good news. Bad news. Blue team also left trash everywhere. So,
speaking of trash, I have been told that there was a lot of stuff left in here. So if you have any food or drink that is not in an actual water bottle, you have to get rid of it. So anything that's not in a container, a water bottle, you have to get rid of it because this place was disgusting.
yes.
So I appreciate it. We all appreciate it. We don't want to have to pick up trash.
Yes. And so because of the trash, blue team did lose 1,000 points, but they are still in the lead.
All right, now for the game, you might notice some things up here.
We have the most beautiful Christmas trees you have ever seen.
By our very own Spencer Thomas.
Wow. Let's give Spencer a hand, honestly.
All right, so we're gonna play a little game, okay, with some saran wrap. All right, so each team is gonna send up 3 people. Not right now. We're gonna pick 3 people, okay, and you're gonna have a chance to come up and unwrap this saran ball, okay. The saran ball is filled with blue and red stars. So you're gonna take turns alternating blue, red, blue, red. And when you're unwrapping and your color star falls out, it needs to go in your bucket. If I'm the blue team and a red star falls out, I don't want that. Okay, that's not for me. I only want blue stars. If I'm on the red team, I only want red stars. When the player rolls doubles, you have to pass the saran ball. Only one person can be touching the saran ball at a time, and it cannot touch the ground. So you're unwrapping the saran ball in your hands. Did I miss anything?
I don't think so.
All right. So I need 3 people from the blue team and 3 people from the red team. So counselors, will you guys pick?
Counselors, we need you. Red team counselors, pick 3 students. Josh, have you elected someone? All right, one more on red team. We need one more. Send them up. Send them up, Josh. One more. Yeah. All right, over here.
I'm going to give you the saran ball, and then the person next to you is rolling doubles. So while she's unwrapping, you're trying to roll doubles. When he rolls doubles, you have to pass it to him. Any stars that fall out that are your color, you place in your bucket. All right? Yeah, after. You're rolling first. Are you ready? Let's count them down. 3,
2, 1.
Go! Oh, pass.
Snake eyes immediately. No stars have fallen out yet. A red star has fallen out. Blue team has 1 star so far. 2 stars for the blue team. Red team's unwrapping right now, trying to find that first star. Red team has their first star. 2-1. 2-1. 2-2. It is currently tied. 3-2. Red team in the lead. 4-2. We're getting down to the end of the ball. Getting close. Back to blue. Blue team is unwrapping. Blue has picked up a bunch of stars. Red. Blue team looking for that double. Doubles. Doubles, doubles, doubles. Blue team struggling to unwrap the ball right now.
He got it, he got it.
There we go. On a roll.
Oh, is he red?
Red team.
Oh, he's red.
Blue team got one more star. Guys, I don't hear any cheering for your teams. Where's the team spirit? We are going animal style, ripping the ball open. Red has another star. It's getting down to the end. It's getting close. Pass it, doubles. Doubles, doubles, doubles. Man, blue team has been popping off with the doubles. We've hit a bit of a snare. Almost to the end. Doubles, doubles. Blue team is stealing it. Red team has control of the ball again. We'll see if red team can end it off. Pass it off, pass it off. Blue team back in control. Red team has the ball again. They're down to the end, they're down to the wire. Blue team, blue team. Red team. Blue team has the ball again. It's down to the end. It's to the final wrap. Can red team take the ball back? Red team back in control. Blue team immediately stole it. That's the end. That is the end of the ball.
That is the end of the Saran wrap.
Blue team.
We have a round two, okay? What do you think is in this? Alright, so this is actually a very, very fancy Christmas tree topper.
Beautiful.
So I need, what do we want to do? 3 more people or 2 people?
3 sounds good.
Alright, let's do 3 more people.
3 more people.
Alright.
We need 3 more people from each team. Leaders, we need you.
When you're ready to call it,
Yeah.
red had 9, blue had 17.
Okay. We need 1 more person on the red team. 1 more.
We need 1 more from the red team.
1 more. That's our final red team person.
Alright, so this round is a little bit different, okay? And your teammate rolls doubles, you pass it to the other person, okay? So,
You have to find me.
let's do, or actually, I think I changed my mind. We'll just see who can unwrap it the fastest, and I'll roll the doubles. So when I roll doubles, you have to pass it to the next person on your team. Got it? All right. Are we ready? 3,
2, 1. Go, go, go. Red team is on a roll. Red team lost control. Pass, pass, pass. Pass it, pass it. Pass it, pass it, pass it. Guys, give us a cheer if you think your team is in the lead. It's in sight. Blue team getting close. They're close. Blue team has unwrapped the tree topper. Wow. Blue team has won this round. Wow. Guys, look at this beautiful Christmas tree.
Good job. Thank you.
Guys, I have unfortunate news. I think blue team won both rounds. 17 blue to 9 red. Red team, we can pull this back.
moved in power thee. You move in power now. Lord, you're not just a God that we're reading about in this book. But God, you are living and active right now. The things you've done before, we will see in even greater measure. By the power of your Spirit in this place, free captives, save hearts, break chains. For you are the same God. We lift you up, God. We give you all the glory and all the honor in this place. Lord, I pray as we go into this time, let there be no distraction. Let there be no looking to my friends, to my left or to my right, but God, focusing on you and putting all of our attention, every single person in this room, put their attention completely and wholly on you and what you have to say through your messenger this morning. Just speak now through your word and through this time that we focus on you. In Jesus' name, amen. Give the Lord a hand. Let's praise Jesus. For the man to my left getting a few things ready is one of my favorite people in the entire world. His name is Asa Walker. Asa was youth pastor to Movement Youth in Westside Baptist Church from 2013 until 2012 actually. From 2012 to 2019, and then very graciously handed it off to me to lead as your youth pastor for the last 4 years, and has been serving our church in other capacities for a period of time since. But here's what you need to know about Asa. Eyes here. You need to know this about Asa. This is very important. Asa loves coffee. Yeah. Where are my coffee people at? He instilled for me a love/addiction to caffeine, and for that I'm very grateful. But beyond beverages, Asa shared so much with me when I was his associate youth pastor for almost 5 years. He taught me most of what I know about youth ministry. Half of the things that you've heard me say from a stage are probably tied back to him in one way or another. So if you ever said, that was good, there's a 50-50 chance that I didn't even originally say that. So we're so thankful for him. Really, so much of what you enjoy and what you appreciate about Movement Youth would not exist if it were not for Asa Walker. And it's crazy because some of you have never really met him. You don't know him as your youth pastor. You never had him as your youth pastor. But you owe more to him than you could possibly imagine. So much of the benefits that we enjoy as a youth ministry, the help that we have as a church is really tied back to this guy. He's been faithful, and God has used him, and we're so grateful for him. So this is Asa's first camp with us since 2019. Yep. It's been a minute, and we almost were able to sneak him into a camp here or there. It just hasn't worked out the last couple of years, but we finally allowed everything to work out. The stars aligned, and we brought Asa Walker back to a Westside. He's been sharing with me a little bit of what he wanted to share with you guys, and I have been chomping at the bit for you to hear this, and I've been excited to hear it again. So you're going to take a lot of notes. You're going to hear some things that you've never heard in a church service before, some ideas that are just absolutely brilliant. So get your Bibles out, get ready to take some notes, and put your hands together and give Asa Walker a warm Movement Youth.
Well, thank you for that wonderful welcome, and that really was a wonderful welcome. I'm really not deserving of that introduction. Hey, good morning. Everybody doing okay? Holy night, it's bright right here. I can barely see you. Do these lights in here come up anymore? That's as far as they go? Because I like to be able to see you. Oh, whoa. Hell is full of sinners and fluorescent lights, so we'll leave those fluorescents off because I don't like them. All right, there we go. Okay. Everybody doing okay? Everybody feeling good? All right, this is what I need. So we're talking about culture. Now, I want to say this from the outset. How many of you have been in a biology class where you have dissected something, maybe a frog? Okay. You never would have sat through that lecture and done that assignment and said, oh, my biology teacher wants me to go home and slit open frogs in my yard, right? The point of it is to learn and to be educational. So we're going to look at some things today. We're going to look at some clips from a movie. We're going to listen to some music. We're doing this to learn. I am not endorsing. I am not commending this music or these movies to you. We are doing this to learn. This is a learning activity. So we're dissecting culture today. I'm not commending it to you. Okay, is that clear from up front? All right, we'll say that a couple of times. Secondly, we're talking about culture, right? Let me tell you something that's already a cultural trend you don't even realize. Do you know, like, you are standing and sitting differently? You are. Because you're staring at your phones all day. So when you sit, you don't sit like this, you sit like this. Do you know that? Okay, so this is what I want you to do. From now to the rest of the morning, slide back in your chair. Get your booty all the way back in the chair, right? Now get your back on the back of the chair. Oh, you're looking so much better already. So much better. And then your chin comes up, right? Your chin comes up, and then your feet are flat on the floor. Yeah. Okay. You see that? That feels wild, doesn't it? Like, I'm not supposed to sit in a chair like this. No, you are. That's how it was made. This is the right way. Okay, now do this for me. Everybody put your hands up as high as they go. Put them up as high as they go. Everybody. Okay, everybody play along. This is not TV. I can see you. Join in on our reindeer games. All right, you got them up? Okay. Now go higher. How did you do that? Put them down. Put them down. The assignment was put your hands up as high as they can go, right? And then everybody in the room went higher, like 2 or 3 inches. Because we really don't reach as high as we can. We reach as high as we're comfortable, right? I feel like I should drop the mic now and walk out. I like this audience already. This is a great crowd, Zach. So you're welcome. You can take that and use it. It's yours. So this is what I want you to do. Posture check. Lift up. There you go. There you go. I'm going to be checking in with you through the morning. And here's why. The subject that we're working today, it's a little bit cerebral. You know what I mean by that? It requires a little bit of thinking. And it's a little bit more teachy than it is preachy, and that's all right, because this is a workshop. But what I want to try to do is change the way that you see the world. That's a small task, right? And I'm going to be able to do that in the next 40 minutes or so. But really, my goal is this, that you will begin to look at the things that are happening around you, the culture that's happening around you a little bit differently. And you will be able to observe what's happening culturally and understand where it's coming from and where it's going. Do you think that would be helpful to you in your everyday life? You think it'd be helpful to you when you're sitting in class, or you're in the cafeteria, or you're on the sideline, or you're at home playing video games, whatever it is you do? So this is what I want to do. I want to show you how to observe and interpret culture. The title of the teaching, or whatever we're calling it, is Exegeting Culture. Vocabulary moment. Are you ready? There will not be a quiz. Exegesis is, it's kind of a preacher term. It's the process of looking at Scripture and saying, what did this mean originally to the author, the original audience? How do we interpret it out of that original language into our own? That's exegesis. So it just means interpreting. Everybody good with that? So exegeting culture is just interpreting culture. All right. If you're with me, say, I'm with you. I'm with you. All right. So here we go. If my clicker will work. Boom. Boom. Hold up. Hold up. Boom. Yes. All right. The first concept I want to teach you is frame shifting. What do I mean by frame shifting? You are about to be red-pilled.
Do you want to know what it is? The Matrix is everywhere. It is all around us. Even now, in this very room, you can see it when you look out your window or when you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. What truth? That you are a slave, Neo. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage, born into a prison that you cannot smell or taste or touch. A prison for your mind. Unfortunately, no one can be told what the Matrix is. You have to see it for yourself. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
For educational purposes only, do not take pills that are not prescribed to you by a doctor, and certainly do not take them from strange men who promise to take you down a rabbit hole and show you something, all right? Got it? With me? All right. But this is what we're talking about. Culture is something that is all around us. It's something that we don't even know is there. It's something that is affecting our thinking. It's something that in a way is causing us to make decisions about how we operate in our lives. And if we're not aware of it, it's going to run us as the system that it is without us even knowing it. So I want to teach you a little bit about how to see it and what to do with it. First, let's define culture. Cambridge University defines it this way: the way of life, especially the general customs and beliefs of a particular group of people at a particular time, generally accepted without thinking about them. That's key. It can be everything from behavior, things like habits that are acceptable, responses that are ingrained, things like arts, beauty, architecture, music, movies, photography. It can be customs. Customs are like the collective norms, the accepted ways of being, the expectations that we have of how we're going to interact with one another. And it can even be codified into laws. These are written standards for how we operate together that have consequences. This is all part of culture. And in fact, it even goes further. Culture is the result of created beings interacting with the created world. So God created us, beings, and He created a world that we live in and interact with. And as we interact with it, we are creating artifacts. Those artifacts are everything that you see in that wheel: attitudes, beliefs, language, customs, rituals, behavior, faith and religion, food, art, drama, music, and attitudes. And those artifacts say something about who we are and how we're interacting with His world. Everybody still with me? Lift up, posture check. There we go. All right. So let's do, before we get too specific, let's learn how to frame shift and then let's practice it. So frame shifting is the key to exegeting and understanding culture. Frame shifting simply means jumping perspectives from a cultural insider, that's someone who's in this system and it's leading you, to someone who's a cultural outsider or an observer. And you're familiar with this. Who's been to a foreign country? Who's been to a foreign country that's very different from ours? Different language, different food, different customs and right and wrong and all that kind of stuff. That is being a cultural outsider. We are observing, looking objectively at the coding of our own culture as if we are coming from outside of it. That's going to help us to see what that cultural coding is. This is, in the language of the Matrix, this is the red pill. So let's practice it a little bit, and we're going to start with something that you're very familiar with. Let's start with school architecture. Who's excited about school architecture? A few of you. Okay, good. Well, maybe you will be. All right. Let's take a look first at this school. This is Little Rock Central High School. It was built in 1927. If you're familiar with American history, you'll remember that this is the school that in 1957, President Eisenhower had to force to integrate. So this was the segregation era, and the Brown versus Board of Education, that ruling had said can't segregate schools any longer. They refused to segregate, and the federal government had to get involved. Now, apart from that part of its history, let's look at the building itself. We want to look at the architecture here. What do you notice about this building? I can't understand it all at once, so let's start over here. I heard someone say symmetrical over here, and that's completely right. Go ahead, Gavin. It's big. Yeah, it's really big. Go ahead, Casey. It's what? Traditional. Okay, very traditional. It's, I think this style is more like collegiate Gothic. Brian, is that right? I'm so grateful. So grateful. Now, I want you to notice a couple of things, like, look how grand the entrance is, right? I mean, look at those lanterns by the doors. How grand that is and how massive it looks. And do you think you would feel really big or really small standing in front of this building? You'd probably feel pretty small. You may or may not be able to notice it. Posture check, lift up. There you go. You may not be able to notice it, but the name of the school is etched into that brick in front, Little Rock Central High School, very permanent. What about the top of the building? What do you notice up there? Windows? Go ahead. Okay, the light tan. So there's some mason work up at the top there. It's very decorative. It took an immense amount of time, it looks like to me. A lot of skill went into this. What does this say about what the people who built this believed about education? Go ahead. They want to teach as much as they could. I heard someone up here say it's very important. Go ahead. Sacred, okay? It's got a sacred feel to it. Go ahead, Glenn. Willing to take time. Yeah, a lot of craftsmanship on that. Absolutely. All right, let's look at another example of school architecture. Could we do that? Let's look at something maybe roughly 50 years later. Would that be all right? So early 1970s. How about this one? Now, wait. I love Buchholz High School. Spend a lot of time there, okay? What do you notice about this building? All right, hold up. Go ahead. It's rusty. It's kind of dirty. Yeah, kind of dirty. Go ahead. Shh. Way smaller than the other is absolutely right. And go ahead right back here. Yeah, go ahead. They didn't put any work into it. They put. Now you go to Buchholz. What did you say just a moment ago? Oh, you were telling everybody, don't diss. Go ahead, Hayden. Doesn't look, it's certainly not as ornate, yeah. So let's notice a few things here. Shh. So, is it symmetrical? No. Now we've got this brickwork on the left. We've got this like Florida stone, limestone amalgamation on the right. We've got a sign in the middle. Is it etched in or painted? Pretty quick to do that. Remember in the other one, all that masonry work at the top of the building looked like it took a lot of time. Well, here we've got some cast concrete and a nice steel something. What's that, Brian? Aluminum coated roof edge. Beautiful, right? Worth going to the museum. Go ahead. It looks like it's 3,000 students over capacity. Almost. It is over capacity. Also, how many of you have driven in front of Buchholz and you have noticed on the roof of the school all of those like closet structures for the AC equipment, which, you know, it was designed they did that so that they would raise it out of the living space, but at the cost of looking very aesthetically unpleasing, to say it nicely. All right, let's try something else, though. Let's go inside of a school. Let's take a look at this one. Here's Plains High School. This was built 1921. What do we notice here in this school? All right, here's what I heard. Shh, I heard it's... So, someone over here said something? It's plain, okay. It is pretty plain. It's Plains High School, very nice. She said the desks look sturdy. What else do you notice about the desks? They appear to be screwed into the ground and they're in rows. Right. And someone said sturdy and they're bigger. Go ahead. Ornate. What part looks ornate? The desk look ornate? Yeah. What do you notice about the windows? Big. Lots of natural light, right? The wood. Who said wood? The floor. You're looking at the floor. So what did someone who designed this classroom and built it out, what do you think they believed about what's happening in a classroom? Important. I heard structured. Someone said structured. That's good. Way in the back. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Ooh. Let's see if that's... Shh. So here's our hypothesis. Let's see if the next picture bears out that hypothesis. Here is Newberry. What do we see here? More decorations. All right, shh. Go ahead, right back here. Yeah. Did you forget? Very plain. Go ahead. The desks can be moved around, and they have been moved around, right? So it's not this big grouping in the middle that's nailed into the floor looking forward, but they've been kind of moved around, and the teacher is floating around. Go ahead, Tyler. No sunlight, right? No windows here. Also, what do you notice about the ceiling height? Lower. Now, this is, and Brian's going to confirm in a second, this is a design result of a very practical consideration that Plains High School never had to consider: air conditioning. The ceiling was really high. In part, it was to take all that heat and lift it up. The windows were really high and filled the room. Here in circa 1968, because I couldn't find the actual date that building was constructed, but I know it was between 1965 and 1970. If someone knows, they can tell me later. But energy. Take out the windows because we're losing energy efficiency. Lower the ceiling. Let the air conditioner do the work. So you see how some practical things affect our design choices, right? All right, let's move on from this. Let's look just two examples of church architecture. Church is something else you're familiar with, right? Okay, this is Sainte-Chapelle, Pays, and this was completed in 1248. 1248. This took more than 5 years to build. Shh. There was no power tools, no hydraulic lifts, no heavy equipment that was used in this. This is all just craftsmanship, right? So let's compare it to a church in 2023 that you may or may not have seen recently. This is a church in a former Pizza Hut. Now, I want to say first off, like, I don't slight these people at all. They're making the best of whatever situation they're in. But what does it say about what they believed about a church building in 1248 versus what is believed about it now? Go ahead. Sacred. The sacredity of a place. Go ahead. Quality over quantity. Okay? Go ahead. So in the earlier representation, a little bit more care and concern for the built environment. In the later representation, who cares about the built environment? It's the people inside of that built environment. Pretty plain, right? Pretty plain. All right, we'll come back. We'll practice some more in just a minute, but let me teach you a few more concepts, and then we'll keep practicing with other forms of culture. All right. Here's a process for exegeting cultural codes. First, posture check. Lift up. There we go. Number one, we're going to identify a cultural mark. That just means something in the culture we're going to look at. Architecture, pop culture, fashion, music, whatever. And then we're going to switch frames. So we're going to jump to the outsider perspective, and we're going to ask, what were these people thinking? What were the influences? We're going to observe the features. What were they thinking? Why did they do it this way? We're going to ask, what influences would have created the values that are demonstrated in this cultural mark? And then we're going to compare and contrast the cultural code then, as we can observe it, with the cultural code now. And then we're going to ask, what does this say about how culture is trending? This is the important part. This is where you see where things are going. This is where you can look around a corner and predict what's coming next. And then we're going to ask, and this is so important because we are believers and followers of Jesus Christ, how do I respond? Because everything calls us to action as believers in Christ. So this is how we exegete or interpret a cultural code. Let's do a little bit more practice. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you need that? What number are you on? Hey, you don't have to write every word. Just give yourself a cue word that will help you remember. And really, you're gonna catch this in the practice more than you will in writing down the steps. We'll keep reinforcing these steps. Okay, who's finished? Who's finished now? Okay, there's enough people in the room. You can get it from a friend later. Here we go. All right, let's take a look at fashion real quick. On the left, we have the Beastie Boys from the early 90s, and on the right, your very own. Now, the reason I'm not picking on Zach is a fashionista. He is in tune with the current trends in fashion. And isn't it remarkable that within 2 minutes, that's a screenshot from a Wednesday sermon a couple of weeks ago, and within 2 minutes, I found the exact same outfit plus a giant chain and hat. Uh-huh. The chains are on the way. I hope you got the VW logo too. Yeah. But notice, open denim shirt, the t-shirt, rolled jeans, kind of baggy. When you look at that, you can't help but think they're the same picture. Okay, what do you think this is saying, though, about culture? That we have a fashion trend from 30 years ago that's becoming popular again. Go ahead. Stuff out of style comes back into style. Now let's take it one step further. Why would something 30 years out of style come back into style? What would that say about the way people are thinking? Go ahead. Thrifty or cool, okay. Go ahead. There's a glitch in the matrix. There's a glitch in the cultural code. But why else? I'm looking for something else. Go ahead. We're out of ideas. Now that, it's got some merit. It's got some merit. Way in the back, Caleb in the booth. Go ahead. Yes. We know something is saying to us, something's gone wrong. And we are looking backward to find inspiration because we are looking on an earlier time as being more put together than what we have now. And we're saying maybe it was in our fashion. Maybe it was in our music. I'm hearing more music today that sounds like 80s music than I have heard since 1989. Maybe it was in ... fill in the blank. A culture that is in the beginnings of decline is always going to look back and say, what was it that was great about the times I remember? And try to bring back elements of things that were part of the cultural code then. So as we look at that, we say that's the same picture. We know that there's something in... Who is this man? Phil, who knows that this is Phil Swift? All right. We got at least half of the room. All right. Who has a Phil Swift impersonation? Come on, Glenn. That's it. That's Phil Swift. That's Phil Swift. All right. Adults in the room. Adults in the room. Those of you who are over the age of, say, 30, thereabouts, please do not participate in the next slide. Who is this man? It is not Mr. Clean. It's not Mr. Clean. Raise your hand if you know who this is. It is the OxyClean guy. What's his name? Billy Mays. Billy Mays. And Billy Mays was all over our televisions going, Billy Mays here for OxyClean. And Billy Mays in the 90s, early 2000s, was this guy. And this guy, I mean, look at these two. Thumbs up, right? Denim shirt, right? Big smile. Thumbs up. Denim shirt. Big smile. How is it that 20 years apart, someone hawking commercial products ends up being so similar? Because there's something in the culture. There's something that's linking all of this together. And for those of you in the room that are maybe over the age of 35, you would remember someone even before this guy. Exactly right. Set it and forget it. Ron Popeil. Yes, Showtime Rotisserie Barbecue. All right. So, a little bit more on culture. Culture exists as a system. I got to teach you a little bit about systems, and then I'm going to bring you back to what this means for culture. Systems have inputs, things that feed it, and it has outputs, things that deplete it. Now, this clicker, you can't see that laser thing? You can't see it on the screen. So I'm sorry I can't point out these things a little bit. Maybe if I stand up here. See how we're looking at a system called population. That's there in the middle. The inputs would be births, right? Births grow a population. The outputs would be death. Death depletes a population. So it exists as a system. Systems take on lives of their own. They can feed themselves and they can deplete themselves. Oh no, my clicker. Go. No. Go back. There. All right. When the system itself reinforces or encourages more inputs, this is called a reinforcing feedback loop. So this is that loop called R here. See how the system itself is encouraging more births, more inputs? And then when the system itself reinforces or encourages more outputs, this is called a balancing feedback loop. It's that loop labeled B, and that's the system encouraging mortality or deaths. What are some things that would be a balancing loop on the population? We just went through a big one. A pandemic, right? So a pandemic would encourage more deaths and would deplete the population. What else might? Wars, exactly. Wars actually pull on both. Wars create excess deaths, and wars also separate couples so that the fertility rate goes down because one of the couple is overseas fighting in the war. So you see how this works. In the same way, when you look at like post-World War II America, we have a population boom, the baby boom generation, right? That's because peace, prosperity, a good feeling, a sense that things are back to normal and that we can predict what life is going to bring, that encourages births because it encourages happy couples who get together and they have money and they start families and they feel like they can live happily ever after. Everybody getting this concept? Is it making sense? All right. You're familiar with feedback loops because of social media, and Zach talked about this yesterday. For example, Instagram. You post a picture, it gets lots of likes, you gain 2 new followers. That makes you feel good. You post another picture. So the behavior, posting pictures, drives the input, which is pictures in that system called Instagram, and it's encouraged. YouTube, you upload a video explaining a calculus equation. It gets tons of views. Seeing the opportunity to earn ad revenue, you expand it into a math tutoring channel and you post more videos. TikTok, you keep spyware on your phone because of FOMO. So you're familiar with these feedback loops already. Social media is a giant one. Let me stop and say this about social media. And I'm not going to say much because I know Zach covered this yesterday and he did a really terrific job with it. My undergrad degree, my bachelor's degree at the University of Florida was communications. I was training to go into the media world. And I'm standing in front of you to tell you that you are the product. You are the one being sold. Media exists as a dual product market. Remember that term, a dual product market. Media creates a product that you enjoy, but they only create it to attract you so they can turn around and sell you to the advertiser or sell your data to whoever's buying that, whether it be an advertising group, whether it be these data miners like Axiom, or whether it be a foreign government that wants intelligence on the people of a nation. So just remember that. You are the product. All right, let's move on. So what this means for us, these balancing loops, is that in the end, we shape culture and culture shapes us. This is so important to remember. Posture check, lift up. There we go. Culture is going to trend deeper in its present course. It's going to be reinforced deeper in its present course until a balancing loop takes over and the system itself begins to drain itself or a contrasting vision disrupts it. So how would that look? Oh, let's practice first before we do. Through the presentation, I'm trying to give you a little bit of academics and then do some practice so you don't get bored with the academics, all right? So let's start here. Let's do music now. Anybody like music? Anybody know Frank Sinatra? All right, we got a lot of Sinatra fans. This is from the theme from New York, New York, 1977. All right, we'll stop there. Catchy song, right? You hear it on New Year's Eve now. They play it. I love New York. I like going there. It's a cool city. I want to wake up in a city that doesn't sleep. Find I'm king of the hill, top of the heap. These little town blues are melting away. I'm going to make a brand new start of it in old New York. Here's the line. If I can make it there, I'll make it anywhere. How many of you have heard that before? It's up to you in New York, New York. All right, so that's Frank Sinatra in 1977. What about a little bit more modern song on New York? You may be familiar with this one. Hold on, my clicker is doing it again. There we go. All right. Alicia Keys, Empire State of Mind. Now, originally done with Jay-Z. I'm not going to play that version. Couldn't edit it enough. But this is part 2, broken down, just Alicia by herself. And we're going to listen to a little bit of the verse and chorus of this. All right, we'll stop there. All right, take a look at the lyrics here. Again, I am not commending this music to you, and I'm not endorsing anything. This is an educational experience. What do you notice about the lyrics versus the Sinatra? I want to point out a couple of things. First of all, look in that first verse. Remember, Sinatra said, if I can make it here, I can make it anywhere. It's up to you. It's up to me. She says, if I can make it here, I can make it anywhere. That's what they say. You hear the doubt? You hear the doubt in that, the suspicion? What did Sinatra say? He wants to leave the little town blues. He's going to make a brand new start. He's very upbeat. The goal is feeling happy, right? What's the goal here? Seeing my face in lights. My name in marquees found down on Broadway. And then I want to point out this. See this last verse here? I want you to feel the contradiction back and forth. On the avenue, there's never a curfew. Freedom, right? But ladies work so hard. Those are people in bondage. Such a melting pot on the corner selling rock, that's drug use. Preachers pray to God. Evil and righteousness, side by side, right? Hail a gypsy cab takes me down from Harlem to the Brooklyn Bridge. Now, you got to know a little of the geography of New York. Harlem, very, very, very poor area. Brooklyn Bridge, it comes from Brooklyn into Manhattan. Where does it come out in Manhattan? What area? Anyone know? Into the financial district. Right by City Hall, Wall Street, World Trade Center. It's all in that area. And yet, there's someone sleeping with a hunger far more than an empty fridge. It's not even that they're hungry, they don't even have a home, they don't even have a fridge. Or maybe they just have ambition. Maybe what they're hungry for is success. So when we compare these side by side, keep the chorus in mind also. We compare these side by side, we're going to come up with a very different cultural mindset. In the 1977 Sinatra, the person is the locus of control. In Empire State of Mind, it's the environment or the circumstances. These lights will inspire you. The streets will make you feel brand new. Right? The view of the present is very positive in the Sinatra. It even sounds happy. But in the 2009, it's very conflicting and it's very unequal. Expectation of the future, Sinatra is just, hey, it's all success. I finally made it. This is it. Everything's up from here. But Alicia Keys, you feel the struggle, the challenges of maybe even facing defeat. Nothing is guaranteed. And the tone is very enthusiastic and hopeful versus the Alicia Keys is determined and strident, but nothing is guaranteed. Now, which one feels more like reality to you? Does anybody say Sinatra? A couple of you, yeah. But mostly we would say Alicia Keys is probably a little bit more realistic, right? Would you use that word? The reason why we say that is because Alicia Keys is far closer to our cultural code right now than Sinatra is. You get that? You see that? Let's look at one more. Music again. Educational experience. I'm not commending this to you. I'm not recommending it to you. Educational experience. All right, we'll stop there. All right, let's look at the lyrics and let's pull out some things from this. Let's see what Coolio is saying with this song. I can't live a normal life. I was raised by the street. I got to be down with the hood team. Why? Your life could be at risk if you're not. I'm an educated fool, money on my mind, 10 in my hand, a gleam in my eye. I'm a loped out gangster. Anybody need some 90s slang interpretation? It means he wears sunglasses, loped out. Yeah. Set trippin' banger means he does hits on rival gangs. My homies is down, so don't arouse my anger. Now listen to this. Death ain't nothing but a heartbeat away. I'm living life, do or die, what can I say? I'm 23 now, but will I live to see 24? The way things is going, I don't know. Listen to what he's saying. This song is warning about the dangers of getting involved in gang life. This was a #1 song in 1995. Let's compare that to a top song of today. And I'm not even going to play the song for you. I can't play the song for you. I could barely edit it enough to make it presentable to you. So again, I say, educational purposes only. I'm not commending this music to you, and I certainly would recommend against this. It's a song called No Time Wasted. It's the #1 song. By the sound in the room, you know it. Now, you've seen enough. This is celebrating. This is celebrating. A #1 song, 25 years later, is the exact opposite. A song is warning, don't get involved in gangs. And another song is celebrating every aspect that it can, in a vulgar way. What does that say about the traction, the direction of our culture? I want to bring you back to this. The balancing loop. Remember, the balancing loop takes what's in the system and brings it to an output. It depletes the system. It is tearing down the system. That's what the balancing loop does. Here's how they work. Hunters, the reinforcing loop. Hunters are rewarded for buffalo kills. The balancing loop is the population declines faster than it expands. The effect is the buffalo population collapses. Hunters can't find buffalo to hunt. Buffalo hunts end. Reinforcing loop. Low interest rates allow people to borrow more money and buy more things. Balancing loop. The price of things goes up. The effect, the same amount of things can be bought as before. Reinforcing loop. The Roman Empire works hard, becomes wealthy, and people can have anything they want. Balancing loop. The people choose laziness, perversion, and living off of what previous generations built without building anything of their own. The effect, no new wealth is created, people become weak in body and perverted in soul, and the empire falls to barbarians. It really happened. Posture check, lift up. Reinforcing loop. Popularity and money are achieved by becoming a social media influencer. Balancing loop. Kids aspire to be social media influencers and make videos instead of studying math, science, and engineering. Effect, infrastructure collapses as a generation ages. The conditions that create wealth fail, and the country becomes third world. There is no money left for influencers. Sorry, I just shattered your future plans. Yep. So it's very important that we pay attention and realize that positive culture acts as a reinforcing loop to society, but negative culture is a balancing loop. Things in culture that encourage the behavior that depletes a society is a negative balancing loop. The task is to understand which loop a cultural mark is on. Remember, a cultural mark is just an object we've picked to observe, like a song. So positive culture, reinforcing loop, encourages the things that build up. Negative culture, balancing loop, encourages the things that deplete. To say it another way, the culture a society creates eventually destroys that society if it is not stewarded well. And the caveat, the truth eternal, is that they rarely see it coming. Cultures rarely catch this far enough in advance to stop it from happening once it's already underway. So let's do a couple more practice items. Are you ready? Let's do photography real quick. Who knows who that is? Peyton Manning, one of the best football players of all time. I say that as a Florida Gator through and through, even though he played for the University of Tennessee. I get it. He's also a great pitchman for insurance products. He's on the commercial. This is a picture of the day he committed to the University of Tennessee in 1994. Flattering picture? No. There's nothing remarkable about it, right? Here is a couple of weeks ago. I don't know who this kid is, and no disrespect to this guy. This is just how we do this now. Here's someone committing to the University of Tennessee earlier last month. This is Jordan Burns. I don't know who he is, but notice this picture. Okay, first of all, let's start with the stadium. He's standing in the middle of it as if the whole crowd has come to see him, right? Then up in the sky, we have this godlike projection of him. And what has he got over his shoulder? That's Tennessee's SEC championship belt. and he's got it hanging over his shoulder. The kid has not played one down of football for the University of Tennessee. Not one. He's probably not even been on the field more than once or twice during his official visit. And yet, he's got that belt hanging over his shoulder, right? What does this say about how we think about ourselves? Think we're better? What else? Huh? Go ahead. Idolize? Go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Alicia, and then I'll come back up here. How our culture views football and sports and the pressure that we're putting on players. Absolutely. Go ahead. When we get to the top, pride, right? Also, it says something that recruiting visits have gone from showing people facilities and coaches to photo shoots, right? Because we do these photo shoots now. All right, let's move on really quick. We'll have more practice. This is not photography. This is family composition. How many of you know the movie Titanic? 1997. This is the character Cal. And if you don't know this scene, Cal is a very wealthy man. And at the last minute, he's determined he's going to get off of this sinking ship. Posture check, pull up. He's going to get off this sinking ship. And so he grabs this little kid that has gotten separated from parents and runs up to a lifeboat and says, "Please let me on, I have a child. I have a child." And because of the sympathy, they let him on. So that's the scene. It's being parodied in this meme from the 4th of July. Have you noticed the language we started to use? Fur babies and fur child. We have supplanted the concept of children with pets, right? So now, subtly, the culture is saying, you don't need a child, you can have a dog instead. A dog will not be as fulfilling as a child. So remember this slide from earlier in the presentation. We're almost done, by the way. In the end, we shape culture, then it shapes us, and the trend of culture is going to continue, or it's going to be reinforced until a balancing loop takes over or a contrasting vision disrupts it. There is another way, and it's when a contrasting vision disrupts it. Christianity is that contrasting vision and community. Christianity is the vision that disrupts culture, and Christians are the contrasting community that desires not to be conformed to culture, but to be transformed by the gospel and transforming to culture. Are you with me? And we have an alternative vision for all of life. This is called the 4-chapter gospel. If you're not familiar with it, I'm going to explain it really quick. When we start talking the gospel, we do a really good job of hanging out at 2 and at 3. You're a sinner, you need God's grace. Jesus Christ died on the cross as an act of mercy, that through him you can have redemption and you can come back to God, right? The gospel speaks also, though, to creation and to restoration. And when we put all 4 chapters together, look at all of the things that we speak to in the human experience. Creation speaks to origin. Where did I come from? Purpose. What am I doing here? Do you know anyone who's struggling with purpose? Identity. Certainly nobody's struggling with identity, right? How often are we talking these days about gender identity and sexual identity and this identity and that identity? I identify as has entered our vernacular. And the gospel speaks to that issue. Because the question behind the question is not, What do I identify as? It is, what is my identity that God gave me? The fall, we speak to sin, self-worship. Have you noticed in some of these cultural marks we've looked at today how we're trending more toward idolization of self? It was even mentioned earlier. The curse of death, redemption, salvation, healing, forgiveness. Do you know anyone in your life who needs forgiveness? Vertically and horizontally? Vertically with God and horizontally with others? The gospel speaks to it. And restoration, all things new, relationship. Do you know anyone who struggles because they'd like to have some friends? And do you know that God offers friendship with himself through the gospel? And helps us to be better people to become friends with? Eternity. Anyone wondering about what happens after we die? See, the gospel speaks to all of these areas. We have a contrasting vision. We have an alternative perspective that offers answers. And Christians have done this through all history. In the Old Testament, Israel is the chosen people, set apart in every way. The way that they worship, the way that they do life, the way that they live together, the way that they clothe themselves, the way that they have families. The Old Testament prophets frequently contrasted sharply with the culture that was around them to make a point about a coming judgment, especially. Think of people like Hosea and Isaiah, and you can go and look up what their contrasting moments were. When in the exile in Babylon, God's people were told to preserve their way of life. Don't syncretize with the people that you're living around. Don't allow the Babylonian way of life to become your way of life. The early church in the New Testament was set apart to God in worship, in fellowship, in sharing of their resources, in the way that they did life, in their sexual ethic, everything. Beyond the biblical period, many Christians through history, think of the Anabaptists, refused to take part in cultural norms to the point that they were persecuted. And even to the modern day, in countries where it is illegal to be a Christian, there are many, many accounts of people that are giving their lives. They are being martyrs because they are going to live differently than the culture around them, regardless of the cost. We have done this from the beginning. This is who we are. The Christian influence on culture is at its maximum, not when we look as much like that culture as we can, but when we stand in contrast to it. God has never commanded his people to become like those who are not his people in order to attract them. We are a set-apart people. And so as we stand in this contrasting community, oh, I'm sorry. Is that better? I'll leave it here for a second. As we stand in this contrasting community, our influence will be at its most, not when we look most like the world around us, but when we are most set apart. That's who we are. I'm going to go ahead and move on. You can grab it from someone who got it already. So, how do we have an effective gospel witness? First, exegete the cultural mark. This is what we've been practicing this entire time, just frame shifting, looking at something and saying, what does that say about what a person is believing, feeling, valuing, and the influences around them? Understand that perspective. Observe the question behind the question, right? So not just why did they say X, but what caused them to believe X in the first place. Apply the 4-chapter gospel. The gospel is speaking to everything. Live as a contrast to the culture around us. It does not mean that you have to fight with anybody. Live as a contrast. Just be different. Just be different. Don't get lost in the culture's whims. Be aware when culture might be leading you rather than you leading culture. And live faithfully and repeat. That's it. That's all you got to do. Still writing? I'll leave that for a few more seconds. I'm going to share one more thing, and then I'm done, and I'm out of the way. There is a fantastic biblical example of this in Daniel chapter 3. There's a fantastic example. I'm going to read just a couple of verses to you. I'm going to make a point, and then I'm done. Daniel chapter 3, you know, is chronicling three guys, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. Those three guys have been told, posture check, lift up. Those three guys have been told, here is an idol that the king has built. And he's going to play music from time to time, whenever he feels like it. And anytime that happens, you are to bow down and worship. They don't do it. And it's not long before some of the king's people come to him and say, you know, there's three guys, they're Hebrews, and they are refusing to listen to you. And this enrages him, and he brings the three of them in, and he demands to know, are you bowing down or not? Because if you are, we're good. If you're not, I'm mad. And this is their response. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to him, King Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. But even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up. Now, Nebuchadnezzar was furious with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and his attitude toward them changed, and he ordered the furnace heated 7 times hotter than usual. He wants these guys 7 times deader than usual. He's that mad, right? And they go and they throw him in, and if you're familiar with the story, you remember the rest. Soldiers take them up. It's so hot, the soldiers die, just throwing them in the door. And then Nebuchadnezzar leaped to his feet in amazement and asked his advisors, weren't there 3 men we tied up and threw in the fire? They replied, certainly, your majesty. He said, look, I see 4 walking around in the fire, unbound and unharmed, and the 4th looks like the Son of God. And Nebuchadnezzar approached the opening of the blazing furnace and shouted, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out and come here. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the fire, and the satraps, prefects, and governors and royal advisors crowded around them. Look how being different draws a crowd. They saw that the fire had not harmed their bodies, nor was a hair of their head singed. Their robes were not scorched. There was no smell of fire on them. Then Nebuchadnezzar said, praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and rescued these servants. They trusted in him and defied the king's command and were willing to give up their lives rather than serve or worship any god except their own. Therefore, I decree that the people of any nation or language who say anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be cut into pieces and their houses be turned into piles of rubble, for no other God can save in this way. Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. When you stand apart, I want you to see this, picture this. The entire nation bowed on its knees, and 3 guys stood up and stood out and got brought in. And when they were brought in, they spoke up and said, no, we serve one God. We don't serve you. We don't serve your gods. So you throw us in the furnace. We'll pay the price. Our God's going to save us. And even if he doesn't, we want you to know we're not going to worship you anyway. And their faithful witness changed the way that the Babylonians saw God. There are people in this room, God could use you to break a cycle in your family that has existed for a long time. If you'll stand up, There are people in this room that God is going to use you as a faithful witness in some career, in some place, some seat of influence you can never even dream, but God has in plan for you. And who knows what could happen when you stand up and speak up. There are people in this room, the course, the trajectory of the lives of people around you, the course and trajectory of your school, the course and trajectory of your college or university that you're going to will change because you do what Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego did. You refuse to bow to the culture around you. And when you stand up, speak up, and show up, God's going to use you. But know this, God does not have, nor does he need, a secret service. You don't need to sneak around. You don't need to hide who you are. You don't need to conceal that you're a believer until someone has warmed up to you efficiently or whatever the case may be. Stand up, show up, speak up, and God will use you. But whatever you do, don't take the blue pill and go back to sleep. Zach, come and lead us.